So hello and welcome to episode 5 of Unfolded, the HARVEY Maps podcast. On this episode, we're going to be talking about digital mapping and the relationship that the digital apps have with the paper maps we make here at HARVEY Maps. Joining me today to talk about digital mapping is Holly, one of our cartographers here at HARVEY Maps. Hello, Holly.
Hello.
Have a seat.
Thank you.
Welcome to Unfolded.
Yeah, I hear it's good.
Yeah, you haven't listened to it yet.
Listened to it yet, no.
Maybe you've got a bit of catching up to do then. Four episodes.
I'm going to wait and I'm going to binge it.
Quite right too, yeah. Available on all good platforms for everyone listening. So, we have called the title of this episode, To Google or Not to Google.
Yes.
Now, we'll find out a bit more about this in time. So let's talk a bit about yourself first. How long have you been at HARVEY Maps? Can you remember? Into the dark days? The good days?
2019 I started.
Blimey, so what year is it? Five or 6 years ago now?
Yeah, it was the end of 2019, but I'd worked with HARVEY Maps a bit prior to that as part of my master's degree.
Yes. That's right. So you, me and Chris all came through the Glasgow University course, didn't we? And I remember talking to Chris in episode 1, which you'll find out when you've caught up. Love it. And maybe 2. He was on 2 as well. So have you always worked with maps?
No, I was. I worked in offshore construction for a bit.
So there's a bit of mapping in there. Maybe.
A bit. Not. I mean, I
not as much as HARVEY Maps.
I did kind of blag it when I was applying for my master's. I basically was doing this job I didn't particularly enjoy. I just kind of fell into it. And then one day I'd had enough and I wanted to retrain. And I was looking at what I could do. And I decided that I'd quite like to do cartography. And then when I applied for the master's degree, it was after they wanted either a relevant bachelor's degree or, other relevant experience.
Yeah.
And I did claim to have worked with maps and charts a little bit more than I actually had.
All coming out now.
Yeah.
You've survived 6 years with us, so it couldn't have been too far off the truth.
Well, it was just a very good master's degree. And they taught me most of what I needed to know.
So when you were thinking of retraining then, did you, why maps? What was it that, what draws you to maps and cartography?
Well, I wanted to do something creative, but I also wanted to get paid. And most creative jobs don't really come with a steady paycheck.
Okay, yeah.
So I thought, well, I need something where I can combine. I had a lot of kind of IT and technical kind of experience, and I had a science degree. So I was looking at things where I could kind of balance those two things. And mapping seemed like the perfect fit.
Yeah, and I think you've found a pretty good niche at HARVEY Maps because you've got, which is why you're sat here today to help me understand and talk about digital maps and so on. How do you think cartographically at HARVEY Maps does it change work, having to bear in mind something that's a digital product as opposed to a paper outcome? We're well known for our paper maps, but obviously we do have our data elsewhere. So what is it you think, as a cartographer working with it, that you have to bear in mind the most?
To be honest, in actually making the map, there really aren't any differences at the moment. The data we supply to the various digital platforms is exactly the same as our printed mapping.
Yeah.
However, the thing you have to bear in mind, and it's not something we can really do anything about at present. It's something that users need to be aware of, the end users, is scale. So obviously we design our maps with the scale in mind of what scale it's being printed at. And on a digital platform, obviously you can zoom in and out as much as you like. So you're not necessarily viewing the map at the scale it was designed for.
You're not confined by the paper in many ways.
Exactly.
And so I would have said scale. I was thinking about this earlier and I was thinking scale is often one of the hardest things to get across to the average user. They kind of understand it to a point, but then relating that to a digital product, they say, what scale is the map? And I know what they mean. I know what their question is. Is, well, what does the map look like? Because it relates to the scale of the printed product that they buy in the shop. But on an app, what scale is the map? Well, how far out would you like to look at it on your screen? It's that kind of thing.
Yeah.
When you're out hiking, you like a hike?
Mm-hmm.
Do you? How do you navigate? Do you navigate? And if so, how do you navigate? Paper or app?
I like paper map.
Yeah.
But I will have an app as like a backup. I know some people do it the other way around.
Yeah.
But I like being able to see where I am in the context of the wider area.
I think I hear that quite a lot, actually.
Yeah, I like to know, what's that hill over there, and what's over the other side of this hill, and
because you get the diehards. You get the diehards that would say, I'm not using a smartphone for nothing. No way. Give me the paper map.
Mm-hmm.
I know you know where you are with the paper map. That's slightly tongue-in-cheek pun there. You know where you are with that. And other people would say, no, forget old stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Embrace the new. It tells you exactly where you are. And I think from when I grew up using maps, I didn't have a smartphone to use, so it was all about compass, map, know where you are, pick bearings off, understand the features around you. I think now it's changed so that it is totally acceptable, and we would promote the same as well. Take an app, take a map,
mm-hmm.
because the two complement each other pretty well. You'd say. I'm teeing up this really big question then.
Okay.
It's me segueing massively. HARVEY Maps then, answer this for me and answer it for everyone else listening. Why doesn't HARVEY Maps have a digital mapping app of its own?
Good question. We get asked this a lot.
Take as much time as you like, Holly.
It's not that we don't want one.
Yeah.
We would love an app, but we're a very small team here. None of us are app developers. So whatever we did decide on would be, bringing in outside people, and there are lots of other mapping apps out there as well. So then we need to figure out, how do we compete with these giant players like the OS and
I was going to say, how would a HARVEY app fit in, do you think, into the market as it is now? Is there room for one? And then
I think there is, and it's something we come back to pretty much every year.
Yeah.
We'll kind of have a look at it and think, right, is this the year we make the push? We do need to think about what we do that would be different, and I think our trail series is something that we would love to get on the apps. At the moment, they're only available on Avenza, which is a paper map model.
Yeah, we should say our data is available. It's out there.
Mm-hmm.
People can have a look online and see where it is. But coming back to the point about why we don't have our own app, is it a kind of, I've jotted down a couple of things that, the business has been going 45, 48 years now. A lot of the things that we've looked at over the last few years, changes that we've made, have been based on a kind of historical an approach to uncertainty in the past, or a fear of something different. Is it fair to say that's impacted the decision and why we're where we are now, or is it something else? Is it simply cost? I think it has to be more than just cost.
It is more than cost. I think historically we were worried that the move to digital would kind of undermine our paper maps. But we should say, and we should have said this at the start, any kind of discussion about paper versus digital, we should kind of have a disclaimer saying, every single mountain rescue team in the country says you should take a paper map and a compass, because technology can and does fail.
Yeah.
So I think for a long time, we were thinking in terms of safety. Well, you need a paper map. We should continue to promote paper because this is the thing.
It's never going to fail you.
Exactly.
I think the balance, and we can have a look at this in a bit maybe. But yeah, you're right. There's that balance between the use of an app and the use of a piece of paper. So the paper never fails you. It just doesn't tell you. It doesn't shout at you and tell you kind of like, hello, you might be here. You have to know where you are. Whereas, but you can always look. Whereas the app. So I'm not a big user of navigation apps. I do prefer a map, and I like to follow my route as I go. But I did a couple of years ago. I remember I tried to use my phone, and it was winter, and I thought, right, I'm going to give this a real good go. Map was in the bag, that's fine. It started snowing, snow was coming down, and I was thinking, oh, this is nice, this is fun, oh, how pretty this is. And then it got heavier and heavier and heavier, and my phone battery started flashing up saying no battery, and all of a sudden, and then my hands were cold and I couldn't touch the screen, and before I knew it, it became a bit of a chore.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that using a paper map in a snowstorm is easy, but I would always be guaranteed to be able to see it and always be able to relate what I could see on the ground, which fair dues was just white stuff, to what was on the map. But my point being was, I remember getting back and thinking, oh, do you know what? Like, it was okay for a bit, but when it got a bit tough, I preferred the reassurance of the paper map. So I guess, yeah, your reference to mountain rescue is exactly that. They're the ones heading out and rescuing people who have relied perhaps solely on one or the other.
Yeah, it's not to say that you shouldn't use an app or a GPS device to navigate, but just have the paper one in your rucksack like you did, just as the backup. So if your equipment does fail, you're not stranded.
Yeah, I remember meeting someone up there it was in the Ochil Hills, and they didn't have a clue where they were. I mean, I wasn't exactly that far ahead of them in that sense, but I did understand that the fence post that I could see above the snow line must have been, and I took a bearing and knew which direction they were, and so on. So I managed to get this guy and his dog off the top. But that was my one big trial, and I have to say, well, I haven't bothered walking in snow since, so maybe I should try it. I should try it somewhere else. Okay, so we've touched on this then, on a digital versus paper kind of stuff. So there's some questions we get asked quite a lot at Harvey Maps. Hence the name of this episode, to Google or not to Google. One of the questions we get asked all the time is, why do you bother making the map at all? Surely Google has it all. Surely in this age you would just use, we are name dropping Google a lot, but that's fine. Everyone knows what we're talking about. That style of mapping that is quick and easy to access. Why do you think people ask us that question? What is it that they're trying to get across, do you think?
I think the assumption is, because everyone has apps so readily available on their phones, why would you use anything else? Yeah. But actually, if you look at the detail on Google or Apple Maps or whoever, in the Highlands of Scotland, there's nothing there. It's not, there's no detail, there's no contours, it'll show you the tiny little roads, and that's it. And so using Google to try and climb any mountains like that would be like trying to use super walkers if you're driving in your car. Yes, it's a map, but that's not what it's for. That's not going to help you.
I think that's the real interesting part of this, whereas the apps can help you, but not all apps. And there was that story of a guy or a couple, whoever it was, they followed their sat nav on Google to the car park at the foot of Ben Nevis because they put in Ben Nevis Summit. And then from the car park was a dashed line that indicated the line to the summit, and they thought that was a path and tried to follow it and got into trouble. And of course, anyone with even a map from the info office would know that there's no path that goes straight up that side of Britain's highest mountain. So, the apps are great, but you need the right app for the right occasion, I guess. So, as someone who understands the technical aspects of both, that's you. What capabilities then of the digital tools? What do they bring that we really should appreciate? We've touched on a couple of them already, but is there anything other than the flashing up exactly where you are?
Well, that is the best bit.
Yeah.
That is absolutely the best bit.
Yeah.
And that's the bit that I use when we're on survey trips, is because we'll obviously have our map boards that we're making notes on, but we'll also take a digital version of the map as a backup. But also when you're plotting new features, so if you're walking through somewhere and you find a new mast or whatever it is, and you need to know the exact location of where you're going to plot this
Yeah.
on your map, that is just the easiest way of doing it, because you'll know roughly
I've
where
done
you
that
are.
several times
Yeah.
actually, and it is it's very reassuring
Yes.
to know that, especially if you try and navigate in the Highlands somewhere and you think you're on the right path, but you're actually following a dry stream or something, and you're
Yeah.
like, oh, maybe I'm a bit high or a bit low.
Or sometimes if there's a really long path and there's no other,
Yeah.
lots of other features, and you're walking along it, you know you're on the path, but you don't know quite how far you're along it. You've maybe walked.
Yeah, you wish you'd been further along, but actually you're only a little centimetre along on your map. But
yeah. That being said, when we were in Dingle, I was climbing Mount Brandon, and most of the way up was in daylight and it was fine. And then right at the top there was cloud cover. So I went into this cloud cover and I was going down the opposite side of the hill, and I was following a line of fence posts down.
Oh yeah, okay.
And that was the only thing I could see. I could see maybe 2 ahead and nothing else, no other features. And so I was following this thing down, and I just wanted to check how far down the mountain I was. So I got the app out and looked at the little dot, and the dot said I was in the sea. So
and I'm guessing you weren't. I'm guessing
I was not in the sea.
So
No.
Did the satellite connection eventually catch up? But
something had dropped. Something had gone wrong, and a few minutes later it was back again.
See, that's quite interesting. So you're the sort of person that understands that there's something else needs to happen. You can read a map. You can understand a digital app, and therefore you can piece together the problem and say, actually, if I just wait a bit, or
but also that was a very obvious mistake.
It's pretty obvious.
That was quite a lucky one.
Yeah.
If it had said I was further down the hill or somewhere else on the hill, I would have thought, oh, I'm in the wrong place.
Yeah.
So you do still need that awareness. It's great that it does shout at you and it says if you're veering off the route, and it has all those extra kind of tools to use. But it's kind of like sat-navs, people who, follow their sat-navs into streams and onto railway lines and things.
Yeah.
You do need to engage your brain as well.
I think there are some common sense decisions to be made, still at all times. But so I was going to say, so we moved back onto kind of how these apps get used then. So what is the common navigation issue when people are relying solely on digital apps? What are the top 2 or 3 things? I mean,
I guess the issue is when they fail. If you don't know how to actually read a map, and you're relying solely on that bit of equipment, if your battery runs out, or you lose signal, or it's just not working for whatever reason, then you're lost. And so I think over-reliance on them is the issue.
I think the concept of navigating is totally different. So if you're on a device where you're always in the middle, and as you walk, the map around you moves, you don't really have to navigate in the same way as if you're using a piece of paper where you think you're there, you see the church spire in the distance, and you pick your route and you follow it bit for bit. Your phone is doing that for you. Mm-hmm. So navigating, I guess, changes in that sense until it fails, as you're saying. And then when that map doesn't move, you've got to kind of piece the two together.
Yeah. But, I feel like I'm being very anti-app. I do think they're good. I should just say.
No. So but this is the interesting debate. So we've just come back from the expo in Birmingham, and people have asked us this: A, why haven't you got an app? We tell them. Excuse me. Some will come up and say, "Oh, I always navigate with the app, but I always keep a map in the bag," or vice versa. We get a whole array of answers. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily. No one's really now pinning themselves to the kind of mast and saying, "Apps are great. Apps are rubbish." It is really blended in, I think.
Yeah.
And we're very aware of that, I think, at HARVEY Maps, and we're just also aware that we don't have an app, and so we get asked this all the time. Hence, we're talking about it now. We've spoken about things like it's deteriorating and batteries die and screens crack and so on. What are the problems with paper maps then that digital maps don't worry about?
I guess, it depends on your own ability, I guess.
Yeah.
A paper map can't tell you where you are. Particularly when, weather's bad and there's no visibility, or you've got lots of snow on the ground so you can't see the path on the ground.
Yeah.
A paper map can't help you in any of those situations, unless you're a very skilled navigator and you can like read the ground and all that kind of stuff. Whereas the digital app can say, no, it's okay, you're on the path. Don't worry if you can't see it. It is there.
It is there. Keep walking in that direction.
Yeah, I mean, experience helps. Obviously, if you're new to an area or if you're new to map reading, then it's nice to have both, because then you can check and compare and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. There's quite a lot going on when you're out hiking anyway. So I don't know. I always think having these different tools available.
And it depends where you're hiking as well. You know, if you're somewhere like the Lake District, for example, there's lots of other people about, there's lots of stuff, there's lots of like points of reference, whereas there's some places in the north of Scotland where there's really very little to go on. You know, there'll be...
Yeah, you'd carry about 9 devices if it gave you the reassurance to know where you were. You kind of... We see people going up and doing the Cape Wrath Trail or something. They've got satellite phone, satellite tracker, GPS.
Yeah. Well, we've done surveys in the north of Scotland where you haven't seen a single person all day. So it's not like you can just stop and ask someone or, you know, double check. So there are benefits, obviously, to the electronic devices in that you can plan routes and record routes, and you can send live locations. That's a really good feature for safety thing. You know, people can track where you are. And
that's a really good point, actually. So we saw a lot of scout groups, for instance, and DFV kind of organisers at Expo, and they're all interested in our mapping, all interested in the paper maps that we make and the areas we have, and then they'll say, well, we try to get them to use the map, but we've obviously got the app. The kids said to I remember this guy came up and he said, but the kids said to us, but you've got the app, why would we bother using the paper? And he said, no, you've got to learn. You've got to learn how to use it. And then I said to him, but you've got the app, he goes, oh yeah, we'll just track them with the live tracking thing. They don't know, but we've put trackers on, you know. We know we're not going to lose these children.
Well, yeah.
And that's different, that's massively different to when, I did Duke of Edinburgh Gold quite a few years ago. We had to learn the map, plan the route, and teachers were there probably with binoculars expecting us to come past at 2 o'clock, and then I was like, phew, there they are, like going the wrong direction, but there they are.
My DAV group, we got told off by our teachers because we skipped a checkpoint, and so they thought we were lost.
Oh yeah, this takes me back.
And then we turned up at the next checkpoint fine, and they were very angry about that. So yeah, stuff like that, it's hugely beneficial. But I mean, that attitude, the whole like Kindle book thing, and the thing about you know, digital, why would you learn the map if you've got digital? It's the same argument we always used to give in school in maths, when it's like, well, everyone's got calculators, why would you learn the actual maths? But
the skills that underpin it,
you do need it,
and they do come out later on. And
I hate to admit it, but you do need to learn maths. Unfortunately,
or at least a little bit. But so I was thinking of like the next generation. My partner's nephew, he's called Ron Robert, and he was using an app called Roblox, which I think is a very popular game. And his approach, he was showing me this map, and he was on his phone, he was just zooming in and out and panning and building, and he said, I don't know, he's a young lad who's, you know, 6 or 7, something like that. And I was amazed at like this ability to understand space, scale. I asked him something about, well, where's this? He said, oh, you have to zoom right out, go drag up from the corner and move back down, and you're there. And I thought, well, this is quite interesting. So you fast forward him and all his peers to 18 years old at DFV, they might struggle to use a paper map, but that ability to use digital mapping is something that I didn't have. Hence my kind of, well, maybe I don't particularly want to use it. I'll stick with what I know, but so I can only think it's changing massively. But who knows, right? Who knows what the map looks like in another 20 years? What does the map look like in 20 years?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, even I take it back to the video games of my youth.
Yeah.
The Pokemon game had maps, and you'd go between towns and all that kind of stuff. So, and then if you go back, like even pre-digital, the best books to read when you're a child are the ones that have a map in the front.
Yeah, definitely. I used to love those. Yeah.
Yeah.
You could follow the story, you could explore it somehow, even early computer games, they had like role play games like, I don't know, Zelda or something like, where there's a map and you're in a land and you have to find your way around it. That is all adding up to digital mapping.
Yeah.
And its influence on, well, it eventually influences us and the decisions we make as a business. Because the reason we're sitting here talking about digital maps is because a lot of people come through that now and expect to find our mapping on a platform. But yeah, you're absolutely right. They're kind of, I think it's just a fascination with maps in general, and however you get captivated by that at a young age. Now it's on a device for us. Perhaps it was books. For other people, it was whatever it was. I don't know. Let's have some couple of quick-fire questions for you.
Okay.
What digital mapping capability would you wish to incorporate onto a paper map?
Be lovely if you could search it.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah. You just put in the name of a hill or the name of a town or whatever, and it points it out or highlights it for you.
And you can look into that next week, and that's coming on to, that's going to land on your desk. That would be quite good, actually.
Yeah, because sometimes you'll be scanning across trying to find somewhere, and it'll be right in front of you, and you can't see it, but it could jump out at you.
Just have a little button in the bottom left. You could just tap it in, and yeah, that's a good one. What paper map advantage do you wish digital mapping developers understood better? I mean, I'm guessing what that question means is, what would you like a digital map to have?
I think it's all stuff that they're trying to do, like being weatherproof and waterproof and extended battery life and all those kind of things. It's not that they're not aware of those things. It's just that you're.
The one thing, just the massive limitation for me is that, as you say, you touched on it earlier, is you can't just unfold it and go, oh, my day is going from here to here.
Yeah, it would be nice. Obviously, you're limited again by your screen size to be able to zoom out and get a much better overview. But obviously, on a tiny screen, it just means you can't read it.
Yeah.
So,
yes, that's true. Yeah.
You zoom out to a point where you can't.
It's just an outline.
Yeah.
Just an outline of sea and woodland. If you could teach someone one map reading skill, what would it be?
I think it's one of the hardest things to learn.
Oh yeah.
And one of the things I've found hardest when I've been on surveys and stuff is when you're walking along and you've not been staring at your map the entire time. So you've been looking at stuff or whatever.
Enjoying the scenery.
Yeah. And you get to a point you think, I don't know exactly where I am.
Yeah.
And being able to look at a map and work out from what you can see and from what you've just seen and from what is on the sheet, your exact location.
Yeah.
It's very rare that I'm not paying any attention, obviously, because I'm there to do a job.
Yeah.
But I can imagine if you're just out for a walk somewhere and your map is in your bag and you've been walking along for a while and then you think, oh, actually, this is where I was
need to check something. Or,
being able to work out when you've not actually been following along as you go.
Yeah.
Your exact location, I think, is a really, really important skill, but one of the more difficult ones.
And that is, you can only really do that if you can understand the features around you and relate them to the other way around. So, and some features can be pretty hard to spot depending on the landscape you're in.
Yeah, but of course that
is a little bump in the ground here or a big boulder there or something like that. But,
and that's why I said at the start that is the best feature about a digital map. Yeah. Is you open it up and there's a blue dot. You're right, I'm there.
Yeah.
Done.
That is a good one. Favourite map? Could be any map. Favourite, okay. You can do favourite Harvey map in a minute.
Okay, favourite of any map. Well, if we go back to the fictional maps of childhood, I would go 100 Acre Wood.
Oh, very nice. Yes, that does take me back as well. All those stories.
Yep.
Favourite Harvey map?
Favourite Harvey map would be the Southern Highlands British Mountain map, which is not one that comes up enough.
Yeah, it's on our doorstep.
Well, exactly.
This is where we are. Yeah,
I live in Glasgow.
Yeah,
and it's all the hills that are doable in a day. You know, don't have to stay overnight anywhere.
Yeah,
there's like 25 odd Munros,
Yeah.
about the same number of Corbetts.
It is a beautiful
You've
part
got-
of the world, yeah.
yeah, you've got
varied locks.
Loch Lomond
yeah.
and the Trossachs. You've got bits of the West Highland Way, and it's just all the walking I would ever need,
All
really.
packaged up into
one sheet.
holly-friendly sheet.
Yeah.
There you go.
And it looks good. It's a good-looking one.
It is a really nice map, actually. But the whole series is good. So we've had a good few British mountain maps have been the favourites, I think. So yeah, thank you very much, Holly, for joining me on this episode.
No problem. Listen to it.
You've got some catching up to do. You've got all previous 4 to listen to.
Oh, I'm not going to listen to myself, though.
Once you've listened to yourself, along with everyone else, do join us for episode 6 with a final episode in season 1. We've got a special guest joining us to recap some of his highlights of HARVEY Maps over the last 30 years or more. It should be a good one.